All right. Well, welcome everyone. So this is our second meeting of the calendar year for the Industry Partnerships Subcommittee for the FAC. So it's good to see you all. We have a full set of GSA guests here with us today. And so we'll come to that in a little bit here. But first thing is just want to say hello again. We are going to do just a brief check-in and see which of the members have signed in so far. And so, David, if you can kind of help me, I'm just going to go through the people I see. So I see David. I see Kristen.
Here.
Farad.
Yep. I'm present.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
I see Kimberly. And
yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. All right, and so we'll wait. The others will file in as they come. And then I want to say too, sometimes we'll have some members of the public come in and we will have an opportunity for public comment towards the end of the meeting. But I'm really excited about the conversation today, and I'm going to pretty quickly turn it over to Kristen and Farad to bring in the agenda, and then actually David will share the agenda in a minute here. If you want to go ahead and do that, David, so we can go ahead and show the plan for today. And so we have some guests. So we put the agenda together. We may have missed a couple of names. If we did, we can definitely update it. But I'm going to turn it over to Kristen.
Great.
To get us going.
Great. Thank you, Boris. And thank you all of our special guests for joining. We're super excited to have you here today. So as Boris mentioned, this is our public meeting, and we're going to spend some time having a discussion with all of you. And then we'll take some learnings and takeaways from that discussion. We've got, I think, 2 or 3 more public meetings before the May meeting, so we've got some work to do. And just to set the context for the group that's on, we've kind of coalesced around this concept of we'd like to focus on how do we create a first step for GSA to search for, identify, and then queue up, small, diverse, innovative businesses that can help solve some of the procurement objectives relative to sustainability and climate risk mitigation. So whether that's in building a more resilient supplier base, or maybe it's finding matching a new technology or a new solution to a business owner, like a fleet problem set. But what we don't want to do is reinvent the wheel, and we'd like to kind of serve in a way to maybe stitch together some efforts that are already going on. And we've heard that you're all doing really good work relative to modernizing how market research is done, going out and finding innovative companies to solve problems. So we're really looking forward to just hearing from you today, a little bit about what you're focused on in that area. And then we've got some questions teed up to see if that can help inform us as we put together this recommendation for the May timeframe. With that, let me just turn it over to Farad to see if, Farad, you have any comments you'd like to share with the group?
No, we just No, Kristen, I think you did a great job. Happy New Year to everyone. We're excited about where we're going, continue to provide information around how do we advance issues around inclusion with diverse businesses and opportunities, and make sure that we can be conscious of the environmental concerns, but also expanding the utilization of a small, diverse firm. So we're really glad to have the guests today to kind of give us some awareness to help us expand our understanding of how we can go forward. And later on, after this, we'll do some work on our CHAM board to continue to move things forward with GSA. So I just want to say thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah, and thank you for that, and Christina. And before we get started, I just want to give them a little bit more context to the big picture of this committee. So we have 3 subcommittees. We have acquisition, workforce, policy and practice, and industry partnerships. And today's subcommittee is focused on industry partnerships. And the committee itself has been running for about 1.5 years now, closing in on 2 years. So they've been doing a lot of work. So there's a lot of recommendations that have already been delivered. And so this conversation will help really formulate recommendations to GSA. So as we go, just keeping that in mind that we're looking at what will be most helpful to GSA. So back to you, Kristen.
Yeah, and I suppose, when you're so into it, like you're all experts in your domains and we're so into it, we just assume everybody kind of knows the full context. So we have focused a lot around how do we help GSA overcome the challenge of really going out and finding these companies, these small, diverse, innovative, new technology companies that don't currently work with the government, may not even know they want to work with the government, may actually think they don't want to work with the government. But how do we create a mechanism to broaden how we identify, broaden how we ready these companies to be able to do work with the government, so that in the guise of really what we're focused on, which is climate challenges and sustainability challenges, where it's kind of a time-bound problem, where, we're using the premise that, an incremental solution here may not really be what's needed. We may need some breakthrough type solutions to drive these objectives, given the clock when it comes to climate and sustainability. So that we've done a lot of recommendations, but we always kind of come back to this. And we've talked to a lot of folks at GSA, and we've heard there are programs, and there are channels, but there's also a lot of challenges. And then we've also heard from a lot of small companies, diverse companies, people with backgrounds here that have shared with us some of the challenges they have encountered. And so really what we're trying to do with our recommendation is kind of break down some of those challenges, identify and break those down with some sort of recommendation we can put forward to GSA. So with that, I think, I'm not sure how we're a little bit under the gun here, so how we're teed up today. Maybe Boris, having folks talk about what kind of work they're involved in for the subcommittee, and then if I've given you enough context, if you can share with us some of the efforts going on in your areas to kind of modernize, reach more people, get more effective solutions for the government.
Yeah, that sounds good. And maybe we can have folks introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the programs they're working on. And I think that would be helpful. And so we are going to, and so we can maybe start with the small business. So we have some folks from the Small Business Utilization Office, and maybe we can start there, and then we can go to folks in FAST, and we have a number of people from FAST. But if we start with the small business, just a little bit, and go ahead and introduce yourselves and some of the things that you've
Boris,
all
I'm
been
sorry.
working.
You had a question in the chat there, and I think that's a question relative to our role, IPS. So
Okay.
you might want to so we're part of the Federal Advisory Committee.
Oh.
So, yeah, do you want to kind of take that?
Yeah. IPS is an acronym for Industry Partnerships Subcommittee. And so just to be clear, we are working under the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And so this advisory committee was stood up GSA under the administrator. And so we have a total of 28 members from across industry, a couple federal agencies, as well as some nonprofits and academia. And so the people represent different sectors. And so they're appointed by the administrator, and then they work on specific topics here. So this is not a contractor government type of situation. So it's a federal advisory committee. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Yeah, when we use IPS, it's an acronym we use for Industry Partnerships Subcommittee. Yeah. But yeah, if we can start with our colleagues here from small business and talk a little bit about who you are and then the programs that you're working on, particularly as it relates to helping small business. Mm-hmm.
Sure, I can start out. My name is Andrew Tooley. I'm the Director of Compliance and Goaling for GSA OSDBU. So in our role a lot, we're looking at ways that we can, attract new entrants and assist recent entrants, maybe their scheduled contractors on getting their first orders. And obviously we're looking to maximize small business participation and participation of the various socioeconomic groups. So a lot is to do with outreach, but a lot of it is also to do with looking at our requirements and looking at what some potential barriers might be and some challenges that small businesses face. And I know Michelle is on as well. And Michelle Lachey is also on my team, so her responsibilities would be the same. But within OSDBU, we have an advocacy and engagement division, East and West, and we have a compliance and goaling division. And then we also have a team of program analysts that look at different data points and, look at the different programs that we have to evaluate the effectiveness of the programs.
And
Thank you.
which part is she in?
Michelle's also in compliance and going with me, and I believe Judith Stackhouse from our advocacy and engagement division. I don't see her on yet. I know she's been not feeling the greatest this week, but
Okay.
she would be a good point of contact if it's like events, outreach, that kind of thing that you're looking to set up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Michelle, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead and introduce yourself. Steve, you are here on by phone. You can start 6 on the phone if you wanted. So there you are.
Hi, this is Michelle. I'm sorry, I've been trying to talk on mute. Thanks for those instructions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, great. So yeah, Andrew already gave a little bit of an overview about OSDBU. I just want to come on and say hi, I'm here, and yeah, our whole division, we deal, well, compliance and goaling is a lot of like internal work, but as a whole, OSDBU with our SBA East and West work to attract new entrants. We also, I wanted to talk just briefly about like the post-award engagement initiative that we have, which directly overlaps with, sounds like, what the board is hoping to accomplish, which is to attract new entrants into government procurement based off of that M2203 memorandum. I don't know if that's part of your kind of charter and guidance as well, but our missions are definitely aligned as it pertains to expanding small businesses in procurement and federal procurement. So, and I don't know if Judith said she was going to be on at like 1:15. Judith, are you here?
I don't see her yet.
Okay. But thanks for inviting us. I'm excited to work together.
All right, thank you. Great. I like to bring up our mass friends. I see my girlfriend Jack. Seems like it's been ages. But Jack, we want to start with you, and then anyone else from mass.
Yeah, happy to. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jack Tikas. I work in the Office of Strategy and Innovation, which is the new name for QP, which used to be Office of Enterprise Strategy Management, I believe. My office, we own a lot of the kind of strategy and execution part of the programs we own. So I work daily with the mass solicitation office. Those of you that know Jeff Calhoun, his team, so they own the mass solicitation, and I kind of own the overarching strategy enterprise view of mass schedules. I did not know the subcommittee existed until I got the email. But the topics we're talking about today is something we talk about often, right? So mass is a little bit of a different animal, good and bad, and how we attract new potential companies to participate smartly, because not everybody fits into our mold, right? So I know we're always looking at how do we collaborate with current contractors and potential contractors, future contractors, in, is this a good fit? My previous position almost 20 years ago, I came in as an industrial operations analyst. So I was working compliance side, and part of that job is helping onboard new mass contractors. So, I mean, I've heard it all from, we've spent 500 hours getting on this contract, and now I've got no orders, right? Like, what do I do? Should I use a consultant, right? Like, all those things are very near and dear to my heart. So looking forward to the conversation today.
I think we'll have a lot of questions for you based on some of our feedback.
I have a feeling. I see that too.
Yeah, so I'll invite other colleagues from the mass program or FAST. We have a couple of colleagues from Fleet, so I'll go to you both after, but I wanted to see if anyone else from mass FAS wanted to join in and introduce themselves.
Hi, Boris. I'm Tiffany Shabanian. I'm in FAS, Customer Stakeholder Engagement under the Office of Customer Care. And I'm one of the market research analysts for our Market Research as a Service, or MRAS, as we like to call it. And so what we do is we provide market research services, usually through our customer service directors, to federal, state, and local agencies. And our goal really is to streamline the RFI process for our customers and post RFIs through survey software that we have currently, and make it a lot easier for our industry partners to respond, and then also to highlight small and disadvantaged businesses through our market research reports to our customers. So I'm looking forward to this conversation today. I've also participated in a post-award engagement team and providing some insight of how we're partnering with industry and training them on the RFI process and getting them more involved in GSA and providing services and products to our customers. So thank you.
Great, Tiffany. Great to have you here.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I think I see Carlos. I think Carlos might be also in this group. I'll let you introduce yourself. We met before. Yeah, you look very familiar.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Barrera. I'm on the FAS side on GS&S, working under furniture procurement, so dealing with a lot of sustainability issues and small business issues with furniture and those manufacturers that are involved with that.
I remember we had a conversation with you some time ago. Yes. Great. Anyone else from FAS? And then I'm going to go to Fleet here. Okay, so George and Leonard.
Well, I'll start off. Hey, hi, everybody. I'm Len Fedoruk. I'm the purchase director for GSA Fleet. And Jack Tikas and I share some of the same angels and demons when it comes to looking at growing the supply base, both with our incumbents that we currently have, as well as looking at new market entrants. And our portfolio within GSA Fleet, we use multiple contracting instruments. We're pretty heavily reliant on the open market IDIQ, which we call our SLP programs. We do use FAR Part 8 schedules for specific products and services. And we leverage a tremendous amount of internal and external resources. So I work extensively, my team works extensively with CASE. We work with a lot of industry groups, such as like the National Truck Equipment Association, the Motor Vehicle Manufacturers Association of America. We're heavily invested in working with the Apexes, which are the former PTACs, for working with small business. And we have some interesting stories that we can share with you. I'm going to turn it over to George Shabat.
Thanks, Len. Hi, George Shabat, Sustainability Advisor for GSA Fleet. So the entire federal fleet's 450,000 vehicles. Len's team's the mandatory source for purchasing almost all of them. We have a leasing program that's got about half of that, so about 225, 230,000 vehicles on the leasing side. On the sustainability side, we've got vehicles that are obviously on the purchasing and leasing side. Short-term rental programs, also an area we've looked into a little bit to see where there's opportunity there. The newest and kind of, I don't say most promising, but so most interesting recently addition to our workload has been the EVSE program, or the Electric Vehicle Supply Equipment. Working through the MASS program, blanket purchase agreement was set up back in 2022. We actually just were able to get through the FedRAMP authorization process with 2 of those vendors to provide networked solutions. So yeah, there's a kind of a lot going on in the electrification space. Working with Council for Environmental Quality, working for the Department of Energy, sourcing solutions from pretty much anywhere people can find them. I think the other person on our call, I think Jess Huff, I think you're on as well.
Hi, yeah, I think Lynn and George mostly captured it. Yeah, Fleet, variety of products and services to support all our different offering types. We utilize MASS, but we also utilize the open market and IDIQ, and my branch works under Lynn to make sure that we find the right suppliers to meet our customers' mission needs.
We're kind of unique from some of the other organizations because our commodities are typically very highly capitalized. We're talking everything in the automotive space, from light duty passenger vehicles to large trucks to firefighting equipment and the like. And one of the challenges we're going to bring forward is capitalization of these new market entrances that we're seeing are pretty poor. And we are looking for some type of assistance out there, either through the Small Business Administration to work with these folks to obtain better financing in order to grow their business, and some other opportunities as well.
Interesting.
Great. Great. Do we have anyone else from GSA that we haven't introduced? Otherwise, I'm going to pass the baton back to Kristen, and you take it from there, Kristen.
Okay.
So you have a great group of folks here
I
that are
know.
awesome experts on the things that you've been talking about.
Yeah, so I think we gave you some guiding kind of questions, and I'll just kind of, and the team has that, and then we can open it up for some other questions. But maybe we could just start with those involved in market research. And one of the comments we've heard both from internal GSA and then in talking with particularly like the entrepreneurial community and accelerator communities is, how are you thinking about marketing too, like going out and finding these companies? Because you're kind of looking across a universe of possibilities, and any insights or efforts around how you're working to improve finding where these folks are, and so you can even begin the conversation of connecting them to government? Or is it truly a, flashlight in the dark type of approach? How do we find these folks?
Well, if you want to buy corn, it's best to go to a cornfield instead of walking through a field of barley, okay? So what we do, and again, this is one of the leverage partnerships that we're doing with CASE that has been very important. And I'd like to highlight our friends out in Region 5, which is the Chicago area, is we make sure that they attend, as well as we attend, multiple events that are out there within our industry, which is, again, the motor vehicle manufacturing industry. The most beneficial, of course, are going to trade events and conferences that focus on emerging green technologies, but existing technologies and how to improve it. I heard in the beginning of the preamble here, talking about we need to be looking at that moonshot. Well, there's a lot of moonshots out there, but we don't have the luxury of time. But for example, looking at incremental change, from 2014 to 2023, vehicle emissions at the tailpipe have improved over 39% just by incremental technology. And how did we find that out? Well, again, partnering, like what George says, speaking with the friends at the Department of Energy, the EPA. But I find that when we engage with CASE and we work with industry partners like the National Truck Equipment Association, the Motor Vehicle Manufacturers Associations, a good number of community colleges are a wealth of information of emerging suppliers because they all have incubators at their locations. Here in Southeast Michigan, where I am, I'm in the Metro Detroit area, so go Lions. You'll find multiple sources of industry resources that are here. For example, looking in the cybersecurity space, Otto Isaac talking about where the industry standards are, where they see emerging technologies to protect connectivity in vehicles and the like. I think you cannot excuse the fact that going to these conferences, whether they're virtual or in person, is totally valuable. It's absolutely invaluable. But partner with the right organization. Again, we partnered with CASE. Again, we'll be attending the truck conference in Indianapolis. I'd really like to see some folks from the SBA to go to some of these conferences and speak to some of these smaller suppliers, because they all have three problems. One, they're not capitalized very well to enter into our market space. Vehicles are very expensive, and building vehicles or converting vehicles for government requirements is very expensive. Number two is the diversity of the supply base. A good number of potential suppliers out there do not understand what the Trade Agreements Acts are, what the WTO and TAA, and a good number of the emerging suppliers, as George mentioned, and our electric vehicle supply equipment, EVSE, are produced in China and Vietnam, which are embargoed countries for us to do business under the Buy American Act. So the message has got to be communicated to these various incubators and various trade groups that if you're going to do business with the government, here's a quick check sheet you need to look at. And that would include, what can you do to improve your financial position? What can you do for resources with an apex in order to build a proposal, how to do a proposal? We'll help you with it. We won't write it. We won't write your RFP or your RFQ, which will put you in the resources that can do this for low cost or no cost whatsoever. Number three, understand what resources are available in your community. And number four, we're very good at taking a look at emerging suppliers and having them speak to our large, other than small businesses like General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, and Navistar. Here's a company that has emerging technology. You may want to take a peek at them, and maybe they will build the bridge to make them a tiered supplier or a subcontractor to sell their technology or better product to a big gun who is already doing business with GSA, grow that business, and then go through an exit strategy and go directly to sell to the government in that perspective. These are things that we have found to be very valuable tools in recruiting new technology and new suppliers. George, did you want to comment on any of that?
Well, I think Jess has her hand up, so I'll let her go first.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna piggyback onto what you said, Lynn. I think in addition to teaching them how to do business with the government, I think we're really skilled at that. But as everything is becoming increasingly connected, I also think there's a great area of opportunity for GSA FAS to put up some sort of like onboarding support or cheat sheet for these companies about what it's going to take to do business with GSA moving forward, or the government as a whole, with like FedRAMP and different kind of like security things that they need to be made aware of. Oftentimes these are very long lead time type of actions, very hard to understand, especially if you've never done business with the government before, and also very costly. As Lynn mentioned, some of these are like startups, right? They already don't have the funds possibly to do things in scale with the government, and they certainly are going to have a hard time spending $50,000 to $100,000 for a hope to get a government contract, right? So I think that there needs to be some sort of multi-pronged approach from GSA, and not necessarily just leave it up to each individual program office to be an expert in all things, and also the educator in all things. Really, each area of GSA should be bringing their expertise in like a united front. And that's my humble opinion. Okay.
Just very good points, because again, we're all following the federal acquisition regulations, which means the FAR is published, and of course we have our GSAM that we follow. And why not put a single spot where we could direct potential suppliers, for example, we're going, like I said, I mentioned we're going to the Truck Association meeting. We've gone to the International Auto Show and we've done presentations to direct them, that we give them a cheat sheet now that shows these resources that relies upon them to go forward, but to have a single voice either within FAS, within GSA, as a market business development, that these folks can assist you moving forward. Because what's happening, and again, as Jess and I are former acquisition professionals, more and more of this is falling down to the contracting officers level at the 1102. And the 1102s are extremely skilled at negotiating pricing and putting together these deals in order to award a contract, by having them actually engage deeper into the market research, even though they partner with us in the program, but have them stand alone and have to educate them in the Trade Agreements Act, in the Buy American Act, in the 3 or 4 different EOs that are out there, and the 2 new FAR rules. In order to do that is quite a daunting task. And it's really adding to their workload, which is slowing my productivity down on getting contracts awarded on time to bring in new products and services. But everyone's taking a diverse approach in how to communicating it. So a single manifest, a single voice with a single message is going to serve. And I'll give you a classic example. I had a new supplier, potential supplier that I met with today, and he was very excited. And he said, Len, I attended a conference about 11 months ago that was given by your commissioner. And he said he wanted to make doing business with GSA dead easy. He goes, well, you guys got the dead part right. Now, when's the easy part going to come? And, again, we said, what are your concerns? And we spent that extra time with that individual. And again, a lot of it was just misunderstanding, a lack of concurrent flow of information, and somebody to say, these are the resources to move forward. I think if we do that as a concerted effort, to Jess's point, we're going to get those new emerging companies, have them talk to some of our existing contractors to form teaming agreements, whether that's through the FARS, the mass award schedules that I mentioned with Jack, or even in our SOP programs. And we will be able again to score some of that newer emerging technology at the same time, having a small startup company have a source of capital.
Sorry.
Oops, somebody's
Yeah.
not on mute.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows he's not on mute.
Oh, he's on now. I just wanted to say one more thing too. I think the idea of like a reverse industry trade show is good. I know that you used to have something called GSA Expo. I don't know if that's a dirty word anymore, but like it would be nice for these businesses to come learn how to do business with the government, right? And they could have all these educational opportunities, whether or not that's in person or virtual. But it is, to Lynn's point, very, very difficult for each program office or each contract support arm of a program office to do 100 things, right? To go find new emerging businesses, to do all the education, to point them in the right spot. It would be nice if we stopped chasing business and had them start chasing us a little bit, because I know that there's definitely small businesses out there that I'm sure are hungry for new business, but we don't really give them an easy pathway, I would say, to figure out how to learn all of that in one captive place.
This is Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, hi. This is Michelle with Octavoo. Having been in the Octavoo office, I will say like businesses do chase us, and I am thinking back to like when, they chase our office, the Octavoo office, because our names are out there and we're the point of contact. And so I think, yeah, like what problems I encountered in the past when I was an external facing SBTA was I didn't know where to refer people to, because I wasn't aware, of like, oh, Fleet is looking for XYZ. So if we can get, Octavoo staff, I promise you, they are getting chased. Like you can't go to an event and like a single person like doesn't get like completely swarmed by small businesses, because we're GSA. Everyone's got business with us potentially. So that is happening. So somewhat connect our SBTAs with other staff offices would be good. And then I also just wanted to ask the committee if any consideration has been like given to pursuing small businesses with SBIR contracts. Now, GSA doesn't have the SBIR program, but like other agencies do, and they are bringing that emerging technology to, through the SBIR program to government. So maybe looking where there already is some help happening for these small innovative businesses to bring their services to market.
So I guess did you say Zipper program? I wasn't sure. And could you describe it a little bit? My answer to you would be no, we haven't talked about that, but I'd like to learn more about it.
Yeah, so the SBIR program stands for the Small Business Innovation. Oh God, it's the R Research. Sorry, I'm not at my. I had to take a call on my phone. I can send out some more information about it. From the Octavoo point of view, we like I said, GSA doesn't have the program, but I'm the POC because FAC AAS actually does some procurements on behalf of other agencies who do have a SBIR program. But basically, it is like a business incubator. Like, hello, yes.
Oh, this is Judith. I have it up if you want me to summarize it because you're on your phone.
Yes, if you could fill in for me, thank you.
Yeah, so no worries. So hi, I'm Judith. I work in Osnabu as well. So the SBIR program is a small business innovation research program. And it's a program that gives grants and contracts to small business companies to develop and test innovative ideas. It's managed by SBA, and to Michelle's point, FAS most recently used a lot in Region 5. Ironically, I think Leonard mentioned Region 5 collaboration. And so it basically allows for small businesses to bring their inventions or innovations to the government and to present it and get funding to develop it. And to Michelle's point, we can send it out later, but it is being used in SBA for our assisted acquisition buys for sure, because our small business technical advisors do review those contracts in accordance with FAR 19.
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Small Business Innovation Resource as well as the STTRs, right? And they do provide a network for allowing businesses, and some diverse, they even have some of my programs for diverse businesses to ensure that they have inclusion. But when you think about the form and the function of the federal government, it's more difficult than what we're I mean, I appreciate what y'all do and work. So please understand, I'm really clear. We're trying to figure out pathways to ensure that people get chances to participate. And so so the bigger companies have bandwidth, relationships, as well as pricing advantage to get engaged. And so we see that those are the companies that get, I don't want to say ongoing contracts, but they tend to get the repeat contracts. And so we're looking for, are those companies also incentivize, encourage to work with smaller firms that may be innovative to maybe create those partnerships in a way that allows for them to be included and to be able to grow, because people do business with people they know. And people do business with people they trust. And in the federal government, you've got to trust the process. And so sometimes some of these smaller firms have a harder time and the cost becomes too burdensome. So we're just trying to figure out what are the pathways to be truth-telling to these smaller businesses about inclusion, to say if your path is marred with glass and rock and brick, this is the ways you overcome them. But if it's just sand and stone, these are also ways you engage. So that's why we're so happy that you all are here to tell us about this. We're trying to figure out what's a good pathway to help them to get included.
Well, Parad, I'm sorry, go ahead. Is that Judith?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Leonard. I was just going to comment that I think it's not a one path to all. I think we've heard that there's different strategies for different industries. So I think what was mentioned earlier about first, most importantly, is being very candid and direct about what is required to work for the federal government. The OSDBU is a support umbrella, and we have a lot of skin in the game, I like to say, but we also have a lot less liability. So as we start to think about what it takes to work with each area, we can, formulate this information real time, not the fluff that says, oh, we're open to everyone, right? If there are barriers, if there are criterias, whether it be financially or, experience-wise, we need to outline those and make them available and, comprehensively gather all of that information, because I manage the post-award engagement initiative for the agency along with a lot of great FAC colleagues. And I think one of the biggest challenges is determining and identifying where all of the efforts are going on, because there's some great efforts going on across FAC and across GSA to increase sales, to bring in new vendors into the market. But I think to the point, there's not going to be a one with all. I think there can be, over time, a collective resource that we could gather. But being candid upfront, bringing in and engaging with the vendors to find out what their challenges are and being clear about what ours are, but also looking at ways that we give them an opportunity to provide solutions, because I know that is a word that we don't get a lot of opportunity to look to industry for. We do it more and more over these years, but to be able to really see what is working in the commercial sector and maybe entertain some of those practices, because I think it was Ali's point, sometimes the small vendors who are doing business with people they know get stuck and buried in those silos and in those areas. So we're not aware that these automations, these innovations and things are really coming always from a small business. So I think it's putting resources together, identifying the challenges, setting minimum criteria for doing business with the government. I mean, it's not an ideal word for me because I'm a small business advocate, but if they need $15,000 to bid appropriately and have be successful, we should tell them that. Because that was a very interesting dollar value for me. A lot of small businesses cannot invest that. So just being candid, gathering our resources and the outreach.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Stackhouse. Thank you.
Yeah, see, Tiffany, you have your hand up.
Yep, thank you, Boris. So I was just listening to what everybody was talking about, and I agree with Leonard and having this roadmap for our industry partners. And with MRAS, we're not really actively out there looking for new vendors to get on GSA contracts. We actually work with our categories, customer service directors, and customers to do that and provide support. But our program does offer monthly industry training, and we do get a lot of questions about how do I get on GSA contract? Once I get on contract, what do I do next? And so I think that's where MRAS comes in, is what do I do next? Not only do we provide market research services for customers, but what we're trying to do is highlight to our industry partners that by participating in the MRAS program and responding to these RFIs, once you are on GSA contracts, you're getting more visibility in front of our customers. And the way that our program does that is by highlighting in market research reports, here are the small businesses who responded, here are the small and disadvantaged businesses who responded, and categorizing them, really highlighting them upfront in visualizations. But in our training sessions that we do on a monthly basis, we open up our training sessions for Q&A. And we get a lot of questions about, I don't know how to get on GSA contract, as I said. So having something that encompasses from start to finish, how they get on contract, what do they do after they're on contract, I think would really help. We do team up with categories as well to provide training on the market research as a service program. And I just think that, I'm not sure who mentioned it earlier, but just understanding what everybody's doing in their own silos and how we can get better connected so that we have one voice. And that's what I like that Leonard was saying, is having that one voice to go to industry, just like we should be doing, or what we are doing with customers, like from start to finish, this is how we can help you in the acquisition process. So, we tie in with Apex accelerators as well in the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business too, to provide those types of resources. And we have a lot of training documentation that we provide to industry on the buy.gsa.gov page, on, through industry FAQs, through our training, any other materials that we provide them. But it would be nice to just have that connection with the other groups so that when industry sees GSA, they understand, like, okay, this is the all-encompassing package that GSA is presenting to me and how I can participate in the process.
Yeah, it's interesting. One GSA, you know what I mean? Regardless. Yeah. Let me, Jack, I see you have your hand up. You've been patient. This is great. Guys, I want you to know I'm trying to take notes and like nod my head at the same time, but I'm getting a
You're
lot
better
of
than me.
insight.
I wouldn't be able to do it. No, I just want to chime in. I mean, I don't know if anybody used the big E word yet, right? But what we're kind of tiptoeing around is this enterprise approach, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I listened to Leonard, and he's right. I mean, there's an impact to the acquisition workforce when they get, when potential contractors reach out to them, or even current ones, right? Like, help me XYZ. We need to do better there to alleviate that off of that acquisition workforce group. So we need an enterprise level kind of, I don't want to call it intake desk, because that probably doesn't do its justice. And that kind of goes to the roadmap, right? If we have a company that's interested in providing something, put them through the machine, and where, are you AAS? Are you MAS? Are you Oasis Plus? Like, where should they go that's a good fit? And I think something that Judith said, and this is something that I make sure my group always does, is you got to have the bad conversation too, right? Like, oh, we get it. You want a MAS contract, but you don't really fit here, right? Like, you do customized. We're not good at customized, and we want you to be successful. So it's having those conversations. And I think that then answers 75% of the questions, right? Which 75% of all statistics on the internet are made up. So that's my made up statistic. But if we can keep 75% off of the acquisition workforce, then we do. So what has to be a part of this though is then leaning on the Leonards of the world saying, okay, this
Yeah.
individual is vetted, they've gone through the machine, we know what they want, they know what they want. Now I do want them butted up against some kind of subject matter in the portfolios, because that's where I mean, I don't know Fleet the way Leonard knows Fleet, right? So I
Right.
wouldn't want, I want to help a person get to where they need to be, and let me help out Leonard as much as possible on the way there until I pass them off. Because then it's time for, a CO, a CS to do their thing. So to me, it's both. You got to have an enterprise approach, but then it does still have to have the offshoots to those SMEs in the room that can really provide the value that kind of top cover can't, right? So it's kind of balancing those two things out. Someone brought it up, right? How many different initiatives are. So in the MASS program, the Solicitation Management Office actually has been looking at improving MASS success, right? One of the things they did is they kind of did a deep dive just to figure out, like, what does that onion look like? And they identified that there's 55 FAS onboarding initiatives impacting MASS vendors, right? So just in MASS, there's 55 different things, different silos going on. I love a good swim lane, but that is way too many swim lanes.
Add 56, Jack, with TDR.
Yeah, there you go. So I'm not advocating we can make one super highway. This is government. It doesn't lend itself to that. But man, if we could go from 55 to 5, that is a huge improvement, right? In both internally and externally, being able to explain what we do, what we can do for them, what they can do for us, and just kind of, knock that redundancy down. But yeah, that was eye-opening. 55 different onboarding initiatives. And so everybody wants to do it. I guess that's the other thing. That it's not, I mean, it's like training. Who's going to say no to training?
Yeah.
Now, what's the right way to do it so that there's value, and so that we're doing right by both sides of the house, right? Both internal and external.
Yeah, that's super interesting, because if somebody picks the wrong channel to kind of go down, or right, you're going down these, I'm thinking of channels, right? The many small channels that get you deep into something, but if you're not in the right space, you don't have that matching kind of algorithm going on, and it's almost like a flow switch here.
Yeah, and think of branding, right? So if FAST is concerned about all of our brands, I think it's easy to lean on the success story and be like, hey, we matched this one up well, and here's a success story. They got a $55 billion Navy contract. Think of then the flip side of that, though, the frustration, right? So we have potential companies reading that being like, oh, I want in there, and they get matched up with the wrong swim lane, right? And now they're having a bad experience when the right experience is there. We're just not doing enough to match them up to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I work with the coalition a lot. I still work with contractors a lot. And funny enough, I hear a lot of the frustration more than because the success stories are out there doing work, right? It's the ones that are frustrated that kind of come to my office and talk. And yeah, we have to do better there. There has to be less swim lanes, better matching.
Yeah, and then what I heard loud and clear too, especially from Len and Fleet, is and I'm going to use the wrong term, the product group, or what do you call, like, Fleet is its own category or product group?
Yeah, we're our own category.
Yeah. You guys send the demand signals, right? As far as, hey, we're looking for XYZ, and you garner some of that when you go to these conferences to figure out what you're looking for. So it has to be two-way, right? This is two-way feedback mechanism, so that you maybe routed somebody the wrong way this time, but if you learn from that, we're right, we can make those, I'm techie, so you make the algorithm smarter, the decision tree smarter, as folks come in. Okay. Wow, when I head swimming. Let me go through anyone on the team have some questions, or anybody else want to kind of share some stories? I've got a couple other questions here. I just want to get my notes.
Well, just a real quick comment on that is, again, when Jess, myself, other individuals, and George would be finding this out, when we go to these conferences, I mean, I don't look like Taylor Swift, but boy, let me tell you, I got people in line that want to talk with me. And I think Jack has experienced this on the MASS side of the business, is that, and they said, we wish we would have found you guys a long time ago, because we schooled ourselves into this knowledge. And it goes back to my original fundamental premise. We don't have a central repository of supplier recruitment information with all of the leverage resources that are available in FAS. I sat on the Environmental Justice Subcommittee, and we talked about this. And there were all these different disciplines. I said, well, have you talked to SBA? Have you talked to AAS? Have you talked to the Department of Energy? Have you talked to the Environmental Protection Agency? Because these are all resources that they work with. And I said, you guys want to create a new model when we could do a leveraged model with all these other federal agencies that are experts in their stovepipe, get them all together, and then let's write this charter and say, these are the key elements that we need to go forward. My last comment is, one of the tools that's always been in the toolbox is the small business set aside. And even within an open market competition at the requirements level, we could put in saying that we would strongly encourage that, again, being that's a full and open market, it's not a set aside, that you increase your small business participation in this area. And once we do that, it does work, because our suppliers will go out in their proposal, and when they submit a subcontracting proposal, we see that they tick up some of those numbers for small businesses. And if we target specific technologies, for example, could be in connectivity, and that kind of facilitates the growth. But again, part of the tension that we have is our customers' requirements is, can you get this awarded in 90 days or less? And within 90 days, you got to scour the market to find a small, undercapitalized, poorly managed think tank that has an idea, that hasn't proofed it, and you're going to try to sell that to a company like Navistar or General Motors. That's the difficult sell. So we got to take it back to the fundamentals. If we don't have a unified recruitment playbook, prayer book, hymn book of this is what is, this is what's good, and here's what you need to know that's the bad, that you need to be able to, again, plan for, we're just going to be doing the same thing, but as a ununified group within FAS.
I think Tiffany had her hand up next.
So just jumping on what Leonard was talking about and having that unified approach, we did, MRAS did some small business conferences and military engineering type conferences where we were training industry partners on MRAS, and we teamed up with some other category folks and customer service directors so we could give them a better all-encompassing idea of, how to approach becoming a GSA vendor, but then also marketing their business. And so I think if, we have these materials that we also go out in a unified way with training when we're attending these conferences, that would be really helpful too, because, talking to them about MRAS and talking to them about schedules, and, there are industry partners in the audience that are like, well, I'm not on schedule yet. And so, you're giving me training on something that I haven't even accomplished yet. So what about the before picture? So I think that would be really helpful, having a training course for new entrants and from start to finish, because documentation is wonderful, and having those resources, especially after training, is super helpful. But talking about it live, I think, really drives the message home and gives them a better understanding of how to work with GSA.
Thank you, Tiffany.
That's interesting. I'm trying to piece these, stitch these things kind of together. So it sounds like we have capabilities, disparate capabilities kind of going on across GSA. And is it a matter of stitching some of this together so that, I think somebody used the word leverage, it's hard to be one big because that gets, but you're like a federated leverage, making sure that you're using the best capabilities, right, of all of GSA to get people moving through. They don't stick, you got to get these people through. You got to find them. Now, Judith,
Well,
you have
I think
your hand up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Judith.
No, I was just going to add that also sometimes we have to direct our materials to where the small businesses are. Although we consider, one vendor pool because all of our vendors are important. I think sometimes the small businesses need a little more information, and sometimes in a different way. And one thing I think that, we can do is try to find ways that we could update our materials or the materials that we develop to not only, reach the big masses, but hit some of those pain points for small businesses. Because to Leonard's points, the reason why they line up is because he's the expert. He can tell them exactly what needs to happen, just as Jack can. And sometimes they get passed through so many information sources that they really get lost, and it's not specific to small business. So I think that would be one area that we could focus. Another area that OSDBU has started to look at is connecting with the program offices more, because they actually know what the requirement is. And that is definitely, a task in itself, because we all know, it's a lot of work going on. But I think if we can get the projects teams who is actually talking and shaping the requirements to interface with small businesses more, to give them the opportunity to ask those technical and in-depth questions that may either, encourage them to move forward in their pursuit, or really say, you know what, this isn't for me, and I can stop here. Now I understand. But sometimes getting to that answer is so far down the road that the small businesses are, here longer than they may have to be, or not in an as productive environment as they could be.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what I'm hearing is like the connection between this emerging tech, the small business, and the program is kind of like the what, right? The what are we doing? But some of these other efforts are about how do you even navigate through and be successful? So it's almost like two different paths, but they intersect, if that makes kind of sense. So, because what I hear you saying is we've got to get more connection with the program office, and then, but we also have to figure out which is the right channel for these folks to go through to get to the program office. So interesting. Hey, Nigel, how are you? Judith, you still have your hand up. Do you want to talk some more, or you just left it up there for us? It's hard to get it down.
It took me so long to find it. I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Leave it up. No, it's okay.
Yeah, but I put it down. Thank you.
No, you might have some more thoughts. So
Kristen, I'd like to bring Carlos in, because he's been doing some work on the furniture world. And,
yeah,
and
for
I'm
sure.
You got some perspectives, Carlos. I know we talked some time ago, but I'd love to hear your ideas too.
So no, I agree with a lot that's been said, that it's hard to kind of find the niche, and especially furniture being so niche specific, and having its own set of standards when it comes to sustainability. And that's the same thing that we hear over and over again, is that the major manufacturers, the big business, the big players, they can spend the money, they can spend the resources on getting all the sustainability things like the green guards and the LEED certifications and things like that. And it makes it so hard for the smaller players to get involved in that playing field. So there's kind of a give and go as to, we can't necessarily lower our sustainability standards based on that, but we certainly have to kind of talk to that industry and kind of get them the education they need, or what we're really looking for that specifically can help them in that marketplace.
Yeah, we've talked about in our group, if we can be partners, as we are partnering in this process, is a phased-in approach, right? I appreciate Judith commenting on really providing clarity, and Leonard as well. We've talked about also providing a phased approach for them to get included, recognizing that all of them may not be able to meet the CDP standards or get to the scope 3, but we can inform them of those importance of those things and how to get them ready. So by the time the contract is renewed in 10 years or 5 years, they can be, the readiness is there. So you don't want to just learn about it and then say, oh, well, that's not for me, but like, I want to learn about it. And then what's the phased approach that makes sense for the business to get engaged so that they can be a part of the system? Because at the rate that we're going, if and I'm a business owner, and I've worked for the government, is that you're not going to have inclusion because it's going so fast, right? The innovation in the business market is moving so fast, unless you intentionally stop and say, we're going to have inclusion. It may not be the 90%. It may not be at the 5 or 10% level, but over a period of time, we can helpfully, because all these businesses that are big were once small. I mean, let's just quit playing. Microsoft was a small business, right? So was Dell. So was all these other companies. Someone took time to invest in them to get in the game. I was a small business before I got to be a bigger business. So I just want us to be conscious of that. That's all. And if we can just give people the pathway to present and to be pleasant and to play, then we would have done our job. But again, I appreciate all that y'all are doing. Just want to make sure I'm not an antagonist. I'm not the Joker and y'all are Batman. We are working together. We just want to make sure that not just some of America makes it, but all of America makes it in this process.
Sure.
Yeah, and you don't just show up ready. Part of it is an iterative learning process too. But if you're not having those conversations and people aren't making those connections, it's really difficult to have. This has been really, really amazing. So one of the things we'd love to get your thoughts on, almost like speed dating here, but hopefully you get a little bit of sense of what we're trying to do. And we're kind of like, we go very broad and then we're trying to narrow it in. But from your perspective, I'd love to hear, what would you think this subcommittee could focus on as a recommendation that would best help GSA in this area of bringing in more small, diverse, especially innovative participants to help with this climate and sustainability challenge? And there's no wrong answer, right? So, because we'll take this in and think about it as we go. Len, I heard you, but I'm not sure I captured yours. So you want to say it one more time? You were pretty strong on your recommendation.
I think George had his hand up.
Oh, George, go ahead.
Len, you got the question. Go ahead. You're on mute.
Thanks, George. So I'm down to one hand, folks. I had shoulder surgery, so I'm navigating a lot of things at one time. There's several points that I made, and I think what we need to do is we need to take a look at, again, my first thing is I get the sense that you want a fair amount of quick hits, okay? So you got to have a success story to build on it. So you got to stair step. We need to find what I'll call the low-hanging fruit. If you look at right now on our side of sustainability, to what George's expertise is right now, is looking at alternative fuels in the federal fleet electrification. So we need to find a way that we start some type, and I know we have an innovation lab at GSA that we work with, but the bottom line is some of these new entrants that are coming in with very innovative ideas are looking for somebody to buy that idea and develop it. And that's why I am very keen on building partnerships when I get these startup companies that come forward. And I said, I think you need to take that innovation to Navistar, because Len is not going to buy your technology.
Right.
I'm going to buy a truck, and that truck needs to have that technology. And let me be that name, that warm phone call over to Jeff Boken at Daimler to say, you should talk to this guy. I'm not saying to do business with him, but you should talk with him, because I'm not going to put in a position of making him feel that I'm giving him an order for a directed buy, and build those linkages together. The second thing is that, again, looking within the sustainability environment, and George and I have had these conversations. Right now, what we're really, really starving for is partnerships within GSA, like with the public building services, because the majority of our customers are on federal spaces. And it's the old adage, if you can't fuel it, they ain't going to buy it, okay? And if they can't fuel that EV at their workstation, but they have to take a diesel shuttle bus to go 6 blocks to where the charging stations are parked, what's the point? So I think if we could come up with a concept within this team that we need to have some type of innovation money, whether it's a SBIR-like program, that if we get somebody, I'd like to start what I did several years ago. I had my own Shark Tank going, where literally we put out RFIs to industry and said, we're looking at this innovation, come in and present to us. And we were just like, I was like Mr. Nice Guy. That was my role. And it was like, because I'm the commercial guy. Have you thought of this? Have you looked at that? And what we then did is we connected them with other industry partners that were either 8As, were other than small businesses, and said, you guys should have a conversation, because I need to buy off-the-shelf technologies and in a vehicle, not individual standalone. So I think if we have some type of incubator fund that would get them to do that. Number two, like George mentioned, that we have our FedRAMP certification that's required because of connectivity, is they have to have a sponsoring agency. You know, I'll sponsor anybody as long as I don't got to write that check. And the problem is when you have these small businesses, like companies like Click, okay, that are going to charge an EV, but they're poorly capitalized, and it's going to cost them somewhere in the area of $750,000 to go through the FedRAMP certification process. Is that money available through DOE grants? Let's leverage our relationships with the Department of Energy. Can it go through a Department of Transportation? Let's leverage those opportunities. Let's put those people together, and let's make that Shark Tank where we can all come in and say, this is what can be done. Here's the process in which to either apply for those grants, those low interest loans from the SBA if they're available, and say also, again, I have a plaque in my kitchen that says, don't like my cooking, lower your expectations. What I want to be able to do is set the time by saying, if you're here to think that you're going to get a contract award in 90 days, it's not going to happen. And give them a realistic timeline. From our experience, from our acquisition partners in the 1102 series, you're coming in as a new company, first time startup, on schedules, 126 days if you make it, on SOP for our bigger programs, right now, 97 days. As long as you meet this requisite, and here's the checklist, and send them on their way, armed with those resources, with those linkages of a person or a website that will give them a person that they can address their questions, cares, and concerns. That, I think, would be a game changer.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, just to add on to that,
Yeah,
I think
please.
one of the
Then Nigel will come back to you. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
So sorry, what I was going to say was just to build off of what Len was talking about, that before being in this sustainability role, I was on the maintenance and repair side, and so much in talking to the vendors. I mean, we were doing 30, 40,000 vendors a year, 250,000 purchase, basically high speed contracting on the government side, and working with vendors. The idea that government is easy to work with or dead easy to work with became so oversold or so overblown that it made things more complicated. And being able to level set that there's no guarantee of business, that you're going to have to work for, that you're going to have to market yourself. These are the actual costs that you're going to be expecting. FedRAMP is part of our life. It exists. Expect a $500,000 outlay, talking with DOE. SAM takes effort. You're going through it on a yearly basis. You're continuing to keep things updated. All of those components. It's not you just step in and it's there. But the other thing is marketing to the agencies. That the agencies themselves are not doing a whole lot, at least in the spheres that I've been in, to go out and do that kind of outreach. So people are jumping in here, especially with the advanced technology, saying, I've got the next greatest solution, and there's nobody there to buy it. And so they're going through all the effort, and the payoff at least isn't there initially, and then they bail out, or they end up being sold off to somebody else, or whatever else happens. But that expectation setting, that it's not as Len said, 90 days, here's a contract. That there's a lot of effort involved, and a lot of people are coming into this in the conversations I've had that they didn't realize it, and they get halfway in and they bail.
Okay, great. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Hey, Nigel.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. A great conversation. My apologies for being a little bit late. I had to get off a flight. So a couple things on the technology side. I love what I heard about, and I'm sorry if I'm going into stuff that you guys have already covered. But I loved what I heard about the incubator fund and whether leveraging SBIR or some other thing. We had also been talking about a Shark Tank style tool to weed through some of these technologies to create an opportunity for these most innovative firms that are outside of Washington, D.C. to bring their capabilities to the federal government. I'm going to get down to a little bit of the how we make that happen, like how we create these pools. Because what it sounds like, we had been talking, and help me if this, if there's a way to do this, if there's a way to bring different pieces of different companies from different areas of the ecosystem together, right? Like Leonard said, he doesn't buy individual tools, he buys a vehicle, right? So if there are companies that specialize in the private sector in making sure that those specific vehicles, right? So a Dodge Charger is a Dodge Charger, but not if it's being driven by the police department, right? There are a lot of other things that need to come with it for them to purchase that vehicle. So all of the things that need to come along, and GSA is not going to, Federal Protective Service wants the vehicle that has all the stuff on it that they need, not have to go look for the pieces. So how do we bring the folks together that feel like they represent different parts of the ecosystem? They're like, I'm a hub zone firm that does electric vehicle charging stations, and I'm ready to do this. I am a 8A company that does fleet management, and I do unique products for making sure that a car is retrofitted to meet the needs of the client. How would we bring those folks together in a pool that we can do some type of matchmaking or something prior to the announcement of these awards, prior to the announcement of the contracts, prior to even the RFI, because they need to be included in that ecosystem. And we've heard from GSA before where their challenge is not finding the big guys, right? They know who they are. They're in constant communication. It's finding those innovative firms. So how can we bring them together to be a part of the ecosystem, not just chasing after contracts? Because what I see is a lot of the small businesses get put in a position, they're chasing contracts. They get invited to matchmaking to go talk to contracting officers and procurement people and OSDBUs. The big folks get invited to come and have conversations with the program managers so they can talk about solutions to large problems. And so they help shape the ecosystem as much as they do. Yes, the industry days, I've been to a lot of the industry days. It's a lot of talking like, this is what we have. And it's not something that says, you guys are different pieces of this ecosystem. And if you bring that large business that you said, I forgot the name of the firm that you bring them to the table, they could help put all those pieces together into a final product that you could use. How do we bring that? Is it just the industry days? That's the only thing that's available to us? Or is there something we can create that is unique to driving this ecosystem?
Well, Nigel, it was extremely successful for us because when we launched our law enforcement program, where we provide the turnkey vehicles right now to all the federal executive and DoD law enforcement agencies, we went out and told all of our suppliers that sold us law enforcement equipment, sirens, light bars, weapons lockers, gun racks, and everything. We said, 2 years, we're buying this directly from the factory. You guys need to go talk to GM, Ford, Stellantis, Hyundai, Toyota, everybody, because in 2 years, your business on schedules is going to drop like the Titanic. And I promise it'll be an icy cold grave. We had 75% of those suppliers take heed and did so, and which out of that 75%, 50% are tiered suppliers to the OEMs, sharing in $120 million in business the first years we launched. The ones that did not listen, guess what? They're still on the multiple award schedule contracts. They're selling replacement parts. And if they were doing one particular supplier, Federal Signal, was doing about $53 million worth of business with us, it went down to about 27,000 the first year. So again, communicating that's going to be key. That part of it is simple. But the thing is, again, if they're new and innovative suppliers, when we put out for an industry day, of course, you're going to get people that are interested that see the posting in SAM. We use more than just SAM. We go to the University of Michigan chat board that put up there. We work with our NDVA supply base here, which is the military, with our friends at TACOM in Warren, Michigan, and the like. But what's important is that we go out and we also say, for the startups that are there that come to us, or we reach out to these different chat groups, we use different resources like LinkedIn and say, we're doing an industry day. You could be a small person. You should attend because you might be able to make a deal. But again, that template works for us. And we can improve on it by getting more diverse into those other markets. But we still need to have a common script that we're telling the same story. Because whether it's AAS out of my Region 5 in Chicago that's doing assisted acquisitions, they're going to ask the same questions that are required by the federal acquisition regulations in order for them to be a contract. We've got to solidify that. That's going to be critical. And I think if we start leveraging the existing resources within FAS for all the business portfolios, but also take a look at what our friends at NASA are doing with NASA Soup, Let's take a look at what our friends are doing at the VA, which we have been doing. It's what's made them successful to pull in some other suppliers. And then look at some of the other federal agencies like the Defense Logistics Agency and say, okay, now we got a best practices. Let's give it a shot.
So would it be helpful to you if we, like the SBA has their, what's the name of the program? The community navigators, right? So they're using business organizations out in the community that represent diverse companies. Would it be helpful to be able to have that network for you to, you know who your university partners are, you know who your research partner, you know who your DLA folks are. So it's another pathway to distribute your notices when you're having an industry day or something like that. How can we help facilitate getting the word out to the community of folks that wouldn't normally receive this information?
Well, this was the original premise of the acquisition gateway that was started under Alan Thomas and I believe also Tom Sharp. And that kind of went the way of the dodo. And the idea was that acquisition gateway was to be out there and that was to be marketed, and that any prospective suppliers that wanted to do business with GSA, we would direct them to the acquisition gateway. And again, that got into, and Jack helped me here, we were duplicating a lot of stuff that was already on GSA Advantage and already on our SOP programs and just dumping it into a third space. So the question is, if we're going to do something like that, again, centralization, I think, is going to be our friend. A repository that has all this information where it's self-help, they could go in, they could read it, but at the same time, you got any questions, here's Nigel Stevens' phone number, here's Len Fedorik's phone number, here's George Shabat's phone number, and email to send those inquiries. If I were king of the earth, I would be doing a roadshow a week, a month of everyone that represents the different disciplines within SBA, FAS, and other organizations, just simply doing the mashed potato circuit, as we call it, on trade shows for various innovations in various markets. And if we're going to be focusing on green technology, there's a ton of these conferences that are out there. And you could be extremely discreet on those conferences because you could look and you could basically know what's fluff and what's real. You don't have to attend every one, but look at who's sponsoring that conference. And if there are significant market players, that's something that should be on the radar screen, where this task force would literally go around and say, you want to do business with the GSA? This is how you do it. This is what we need. This is how we do it. Here's how we go about. And then I'll end my speech like I do with every other prospective supplier. Call me back in 5 days. I set up a call, and what I want to hear from you, are you in or are you out? And if you're in, let's help you with those resources and move forward. And if you're out, I put it on the report so that, and the reason why we do that, because some of them get funny and they write their congressional representative and says, GSA won't do business with me. And we come back and say, hey, look, we invited them. We went to this conference. We put it back on them. We never heard back from them. And those congressional noises go away. It's a defendable, repeatable, and responsible system to develop suppliers.
That's good. I think, Judith, did your hand go up and come back down? That was awesome. Thank you. Good question, good response. I mean,
No, it did. It was great response. I just wanted to touch on something Nigel mentioned, small businesses out there shopping for work. I think Leonard hit on it. And I think we can be more intentional with our large businesses and making sure that they know small business is important to us and putting some type of responsibilities on them to, in contracting right now, when we get a procurement, if it can't go small business, there's a small business participation plan. There's small business evaluation factors that the contracting team can use to make sure that the prime contractor is using small business. And with the small business participation plan, you can even evaluate vendors against each other on their plan to use small business. So I think the more we send a message to the large suppliers, to Leonard's point about the big automotive companies.
Yeah.
That we want to work with small businesses and get them on board to make them a part of the supply chain. We will see small businesses increase their share, whether it's directly or indirectly, because the large businesses want the work.
Yeah.
Many years ago, we did some solar procurements, and instead of them going large, we went 8A, and all of the large companies that were in that field were reaching out. We never had so many large businesses reach out to the small business office ever, because they were trying to locate the players, because they wanted to be a part of that. So if in the industries that we can continue to make those connections without liability, that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's not all or nothing one way or another. I think it's got to be a really nice mix of how can the large help play? How can we help just do better matching? So this has really been fascinating. Nigel, do you have your hand up?
Yes. I love the idea of the matching, and it's definitely going to take the entire ecosystem of large and small working together. A question, Leonard, you actually had another really great point that I wanted to pull the string on a little bit more around leveraging the grant programs that exist at DOT and DOE that are funded through IIJA or the Inflation Reduction Act around sustainability, renewable energy, and so forth. I'm trying to think of a recommendation that we could use that could gain access to those dollars to facilitate that FedRAMP certification process that you were talking about. Is that something that would run through, in your mind, through a SBA partnership that to access the small businesses, or is that simply just grant dollars that would be that we could recommend? GSA create something, recommend interagency partnerships, because that's one of the things we were thinking about, how we could recommend agencies work together versus getting rid of those silos. What were you thinking about that?
Well, we don't have grant authority, which means, okay, I can't take grant money. We learn that, of course. We deal extensively with the tribal nations on buying vehicles, and unless the language is enacted in the grant by Congress or the sponsor, it's forbidden. So what would happen is that if these smaller businesses had access to capital through either no interest loans, low interest loans, or grants that would go directly to the business, if and only if that would lead to an award that required them to get, let's say, a NIST 801 or a FedRAMP certification in order to get government business, I think that would go a long way. Even if they don't win the award, even if they don't, because then if they don't get it from GSA, they could simply go and compete for business with the Department of Defense or any other federal agency. Say, hey, guess what? We've got this and it's FedRAMP approved. The problem that we have right now is that you're talking about innovators. Resellers are always there, okay?
Right.
They are the tentacles on the Portuguese man of war. They sweep for prey, okay? And that's good, because people make their living that way, getting contracts. But you're looking to bring in innovation. So if you're going to have a startup company, to, like George says, hey, you're going to need $750,000 to get that. And they're like, I'd really like to do that, but I could spend $750,000 and there's still no guarantee that I can get business. But if the government, through the IRA or any of these other programs that were passed, could fund those either at low interest, no interest, or grants and managed by an agency, whether it be the DOE, the DOT, or the SBA, I think that goes a long way. Because then what happens from a procurement side of the business, us in the operating units, all we know is they're capitalized. Where the money comes from is irrelevant. We know that they're capitalized, that they'll be able to meet the responsibility determination to get to that fair and reasonable price in order to make a contract award. Jack, would you agree with that?
100%.
If Jack says it, it's law.
And it's recorded, so double book.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go back and go through all this and listen again and take, there's so many great things coming here. I see a few people have to drop. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I certainly don't want to cut the conversation short, but I think we do want to acknowledge that, you know, we're really focused on this, how do we create the juice or the oil, not to use a vehicle analogy, even though that's an old school one, to kind of find the people, get them in, make sure they're equipped to be onboarded, and then matching them with the right folks. So very interesting conversation. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. I hope we can reach out to you. I think Boris has captured all your contact information if we have further questions or want to clarify. And also, as we're shaping some of our recommendations, would love to get your feedback on that as we go through that. I think Troy has to drop there, Boris. So
Hey, Jack, I saw you come off mute. I just want to give you opportunity to give one more comment before we go.
Oh, I was just getting ready to tell everybody thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead, Kristen, back to you.
that's okay. Any last comments from the group? If not, we're going to switch over to, I believe, public comment, and then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. And Farad, you're going to help lead the team through that, I believe.
Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Really informative.
Thanks, everybody. I do want to
Thank you,
say
everybody.
thank you. Good to see you again,
Thank you
Jack.
so
And then
much.
we'll be in touch. Really appreciate lots of good information today. Thank you, my GSA colleagues. Appreciate you. And so I don't believe we had a couple of folks earlier on, but I think I don't see anyone right now. So we can probably go right to digesting the information that we just received. It's like a fire hose here.
Yeah, it was like,
Yes.
That was a lot of.
I need a
Wonderful.
character map.
I was like, oh my
Well,
God.
now the
Things
good
and
news
stuff.
is we record this so that you can go back, and I think we should
Yeah.
definitely go back and listen, because there was a lot of things
It was a
will
lot.
help really land this plane well. So yeah, I'm encouraged by what we heard today. So I think we can, I'll turn it back to you for our kind of lead. We have the Jamboard we started, and David will share screen in a minute here. Let me put the link on the chat, and then you can all get on the Jamboard.
And so y'all talk about what just happened.
Yeah, my head hurts. Listen, guys, I've got to drop, and Farad's going to close out the session with all of you, and then definitely, Boris, once it's available, the recording, I think we should go back and listen to it again. So, but I'll be back in touch, everybody. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, Farad, that if you want to start with like what just happened.
But let me say one thing though before.
Awesome.
One thing that's really powerful about what we just heard is Fleet is a program that has done really fantastic work in the last couple of years. I mean, they are leading the charge for a lot of programs that are trying to do sustainability. And I really feel like the concept that Leonard laid out are phenomenal. I think there is some really, really powerful things there. And so they're talking, what I'm trying to say is they're talking with a lot of authority because they've done things that work. I mean,
And they seem to have looked
they've done
across
things that really
too.
work. And so, yeah, I think we have a great set of contacts here we can follow up with. Yeah, but go ahead.
They have a lot of intel, you know, they've
Yeah.
done a lot of research on what other folks are doing too, you know, with the other government, you know, what's worked, what hasn't, you know.
Yes.
They were very, it was a real good
Yeah.
you know, he's like, I could do more of that, you know, his comment that, you know, if I had the time, I'd do one of those a month or a week, you know, those were the things that got them. So real good insight about, what do you say, the angels and demons?
Yeah, you know, and I think it's important. I mean, and maybe I'm shifting, and Kristen may not be happy with me, but she's not here. It's like I want to do a jam board too, but something just happened here. I mean, we've been working on this for 2-3 years around processes and understanding and creating inclusion. And I think hearing from them was very insightful to share with the administrator. I mean, I don't think we can walk away from this. I don't want to come back to this. So I'm calling an audible, and I'll just get beat up by Kristen. And if so, y'all can fire me. I'll be all right. And I know it's being taped. But it's important to hear, like, what we just experienced was people telling us that, one, there's problems with connectivity, there's problems with sourcing, there's problem with, they're telling us, and they're trying to find solutions.
But Farad, they also gave us some things that would be helpful that directly
Correct.
connect. What I heard was we were collecting information and kind of brainstorming on what some of the solutions were, and we were down the right path categorically, right? They talked about interagency communication, figuring out what DoD was doing, what they're doing, and what DOE was doing. They talked about maybe leveraging some of the existing programs instead of creating something new. They mentioned SBIR type program or a Shark Tank type program in order to bring those innovators to the table. We talked about a Shark Tank type program and making what GSA has more robust and maybe targeting it specifically to this industry. So we're very targeted about who we're bringing to that Shark Tank. The FedRAMP piece was brilliant because I've started to hear more and more concerns about that. And the idea that, GSA can't write grants, but DOT and DOE are writing grants every day. Like I'm helping folks all the time trying to target HBCUs and small business and big business partner together to go after these grants. Is it possible for us to recommend that GSA recommend that the agencies consider coming together for a very, very specific grant for those innovative small businesses to help them through that FedRAMP process? Because FedRAMP's not going away. So even if they don't get a specific contract with this, if we find companies that are in that incubator that we talked about, that pool of pre-contract folks, one of the things that we could recommend is they get grants for helping them through that FedRAMP process. Because even at the end of the day, now the government now has a pool of vetted small businesses that are FedRAMP certified that they can work with, if not on this specific project, on a plethora of other things in that field, right? So they really gave a number of connective tissue ideas that I think we can expand upon.
And lastly, they said, and I got those first two, and the third thing I got was, it worked when they had a reverse auction, when they did a reverse, right? When they had the companies go to the small businesses, they said they found them. And we found out in the private market, we find out when you encourage participation is one thing, but when you demand it, things happen.
Yeah.
Right. And they said they indicated that those big companies found small business to initiate, execute, and to deliver because they want the business. So
Farad, let me ask the question on that then. So is this a question of unbundling some of these contracts that are out there in the larger space and making them small business set-asides? So the companies, the large businesses, are required to provide their goods and services as their subcontractors or their joint venture or their strategic partners, because the contracts are designated for small business and the agencies are telling industry, you can have all the access to us you want. It comes with a partnership with one of these small firms.
They told us that was the solution. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say to you. Like, that's why I'm like, I felt like something happened here. They told us that was a solution, but they've not been doing it. And so,
Right.
I mean, did y'all not
I
hear that?
also, yeah, I did too. The other thing that I heard, and I need to rewind because I don't know my federal positions well enough, was some of the small ball they were giving us, which is some of those procurement folks that were both putting the deals together, but also helping to curate some of those relationships. So I don't know what level that was. He said it was a project manager or procurement 1200, or there was a number and a name, a title in there. But that's also been my experience from the small business side, is who are those people in the procurement chain that are better positioned to understand some of that either curating or matchmaking or identifying that needs to happen. So I need to go back and re-listen to that, because that was some of our conversation too, is who in the procurement or the acquisition food chain actually has more of the information and intel as these things move through the system in how that's going to turn out for any type of business. So I agree with you, Farad. I was like, yeah, that was a lot. But all of it was, almost every piece of it was a takeaway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is a group called the Customer Service CASE, and Stephanie, I'm trying to remember the acronym. CASE is basically a customer service. They work with the various customers of GSA, and so they are helping Denise. What you're talking about is he mentioned CASE, and I
Got
can't
you.
remember what the acronym is,
Yeah.
and I'll make sure to share it. But there is a group that they're focused on the customers. They work with the different customers.
Yeah, but what was interesting about that conversation, and I remember, Denise, was that they were saying that they, as the Ozdabus, they didn't get that information as much.
Right.
They
So that was also, it was the
Right.
disconnected among those teams too, that was interesting to see.
Right. They said they didn't get the information, nor were they able to give connections to the right people. So you got Ozdabus in the community supposed to be connecting,
And they're the ones being chased.
and they're the ones being
Yes.
chased, but they have no connectivity.
Right.
Well, Boris is pushing me. He's acting like a civil, like a civic. And so I'm gonna let Boris tell me where to go. But I just
All
want
right.
but
Can
I
we
thought,
can we still talk while we're doing the Jamboard?
Well, I
Because
tell you
I want to
what,
write this, like, I want to write this down on the Jamboard. I
Yeah.
think these are the things that should be going,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
for
So-
specifically the contracts set aside for small and other businesses, right? That would then force the big businesses to reach out to their industry networks to go find them, which they will do. And that means it's not on the burden of the government to go find them, because industry knows industry.
That's
They'll go
right.
find each other, right? So
That's right.
this will say, no, we are going to make sure we're going to increase the set asides for small and designate whatever, and industry will find the people to work with to bring them in. And that also solves a larger problem that we've been talking about, which is the decline in the number of contractors available to the federal government. We
Right.
have to
Exactly.
bring more
Because the best
companies.
on-ramp is a subcontract.
Yes, right. It's work, right? It's
That's
not a bid. It's not a
on-ramp
proposal.
being paid for by the primes.
Yeah, yes, yes.
And
Yes.
meaningful because, it's while
So-
the iron's hot.
So two things. I think the Jamboard is going to help us capture at least the ideas. We don't need a lot of words, but just there's so many golden nuggets. And Stephanie, you have something to say. I wanted to bring you in.
I was just gonna make a comment towards Denise as far as where do you find these individuals? Because the discipline is somewhat new, I think we should all consider the fact that sometimes you're gonna have to build this plane while you're flying it. So a lot of these people will be learning as we go. Another thing I like to also suggest and have everybody consider in listening to the discussion is having champions from each one of the staff services, to have a representative from each one of the offices that are willing to assist with small business and sustainability. So they will be the touch point for OSBU, and they will be the names for each region that you go to. And they can build a working group, and then they can begin to coalesce around what events and conferences are out there and go from there. Because one thing I continue to hear them say, they didn't know who to go to. If they had a champion in each staff office or service office that was designated for that particular task, that might be useful. Because this is something that we do with cyber. We have a C-SCRAM champ from each service area. They come together, they do working groups, things of that nature, and then build out. But just a suggestion.
Stephanie, can you help me out with terminology? So when you say service office, is that in the program management? Is that in the administration of the actual function? Like where do they fit?
So I would just say offices. So like FAC might have a program office. So maybe they will offer up a representative for sustainability. And then you'll say Fleet might have one. So we'll say Fleet, we need someone, if you could give us a small business sustainability individual that will come and meet and discuss these topics and provide with these conferences. So when I say staff or service offices, that's necessarily our offices. And then you build that list of internal representatives that the small business office can touch base with and say, go to region 10, you'll go to Stephanie, and that's who you'll speak to in regards to sustainability.
Okay, so I like that. I'm trying to, so would that also then, it sounds like we could use that same model to then access the folks within the agencies and the agency components, right? Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, and then that would be because the idea that the OSDBUs don't know who to call
Yeah.
is problematic, and I'm seeing it on the outside looking in, and now I understand that it's not just the OSDBUs, they're having trouble identifying the people in the program offices in order to get information.
Mhm.
I like that. I like that.
And then when they know of conferences, those representatives, when they have their issues, maybe they'll get an email from a small business person. They can bring that email to the group when they meet monthly. And then they will all be aware of what's going on out there. There'll be shared information. And then they can help OSBU resolve whatever issues they have to resolve. But you can start to build an internal coalition in order to try to support this effort.
Yeah, so I've been playing in there. I put small businesses as the lead for contracts. I have small businesses and sustainability champions in GSA to support the growth and the leadership of it for inclusion, align government programs with procurement opportunities, leverage SBIR and SETRs, and improve internal process to support the OSDBU's efforts. I see others are typing too. So please get in the jam board and jam on it.
So can I just touch on something about this? One thing they did touch on about working with the bigs and the smalls, right? They're like, oh, well, we told them that we were going to work with the manufacturers and we were only going to buy direct from the manufacturer. That sounds great for the government. But if you're going directly to Ford or GM or Chrysler for your vehicles and you're cutting out the folks who would actually do the layer and they now have to sub to them, the challenge now is, despite the fact that SBA has now their first tier rule about you can use it as a prime past performance. Whenever a small business is sub to a big, they are beholden to the big. And they are beholden to all of the issues related to the big. Meaning we've understood the bait and switch. We've learned about contract diminish. You know, you've got 15 people on a contract 1 year. The next year you have 10. The next year you have 5. The rebadging of staff, all that stuff that comes along with you not having a contract with the federal government. As a sub, your contract is with the prime. So how does this, I want to make sure that as we're doing this, we're not creating even a more uneven playing field that the smaller businesses are entering, where they're always beholden to a large business, even though they are the innovators. They're the ones bringing the new technology and the new processes and the new ideas. How do we get a way to make sure that they are leading the charge? And if the bigs want to participate, yeah, they can do up to 49% of the work. But the small businesses, the more innovative firms, your mid-sized firms, are the ones that are driving the train to bring this innovation to the marketplace.
Yeah, I said conduct a challenge for small businesses to get exposure and an engagement plan. That's what I'm putting down. I don't know, is that what you were saying?
But I guess I'm asking, Nigel, where you're going. Is it that we like say so much of the business has to go as to the small business or medium-sized business as a prime?
Yeah, they said
small business do set aside. They do small business set asides all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And they said that worked.
And they said it worked.
Right. So that's what we probably should write down then on the jam board.
And I don't, and I would take it like small business set asides. Literally put it like, no, this must go to a small business.
Right.
Rule of 2, whatever we need, the existing statute. And this is not, we don't have to worry about court cases or diversity issues, right? It's just about small.
Yeah.
And this is about increasing the number of companies in the supplier base. And if Ford and GM can help supplement by giving 49% of the work and helping the other with the 51%, great, wonderful. You just trained up a small business to be able to do even more complex work. Wonderful. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Right.
And
we're definitely seeing that in the construction industry where minority firms are coming together and saying, okay, we're going to pick a majority firm to be our 49% partner. And Turner's doing a lot of that. So yes, we should. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think understanding that a little more too, because there are a lot of ways that the small business set aside seem to manifest themselves when it comes to, we need to do market research and make sure there are enough small businesses so we can get up to the right rule of what is the rule of what? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it in order to justify setting aside? Because I've realized that there's different rules in, say, some of the mass schedules than there may be in just going off the schedule purchases. So I think even understanding what the nuances are of how they set aside for small business could be important to see. I'm afraid to see, we'll see like 4 or 5 variations of that, but maybe not. Maybe there's only a couple different ones.
So Denise, I was kind of thinking like in terms of fleet management, right?
Mhm.
Let's say that a government agency wants to go electrical vehicles, and this is sort of going down the path I think you were going, and they've got to buy those vehicles from a GM or one of these big companies. How do they can still lead that effort in my mind. They can still be the go-between between the government and a GM. Are there any thoughts on that?
Denise, Daryl, can you repeat yourself? I'm trying to understand what do you mean? Who could be the go-between?
So we were talking about if small businesses were trying to prime something, and I felt like Denise was saying there's iterations, different ways of priming. We want to make sure that they can actually prime the work that's given to them. So an example I'm giving is like a fleet management job where, let's say, an agency wants to go and have like 1,000 electrical vehicles and they need to go out and buy this. But these vehicles have to come from a GM.
So I don't think that's my question. Does it have to come from a GM, or is that just easy for the agency to go to a GM and say, you handle, if like Federal Protective Service, they buy police cars. If they move their vehicles to be the electric Dodge, whatever, the fast car, right? They still are going to need it to look different and function different from what you would get from what I would buy from the dealer, right? It has to have the right paint, has to have the right stickers, the right lights, the right speaker announcement things, whatever, sirens and all that kind of, all the bells and whistles.
Mm-hmm.
There are companies that do that already have relationships with the manufacturer and say, okay, you give me 15 of these cars and I will take them and turn them into the proper police vehicles for the city of Dallas.
Okay.
Right. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like that can be a small business set aside, knowing full and well, you're going to have to go to Dodge to get the Dodge Charger. But when you put all these other things, right, and the companies already exist, they're out there, they just didn't know they could work with the federal government. So the question is, how do we make that a small business set aside? So now we go get them.
So what you're talking about, and I'm being mindful of time, what you're really talking about is a value-added reseller, right? I mean, that's what you're putting the value add on that to resell that product to the federal government.
Product, yes, but also for services. Like, how do we do that again for services in addition to, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the idea of, if we start from the concept of the agency's asking us to increase the number of contractors available to them.
Yes.
There are only so many $30 billion international global firms that exist, period. We know the list, right? So if you're talking about, and they're already in the game. So if we're looking at identifying the folk, we have to go small. And the way to do that, they're telling us, is make the contract small business set-asides, and promote directly with the large businesses that we already have relationships with, to go find the smalls out there and bring them to the government.
So let me go back to this jam board. We have to put this jam board together to pass the test that Kristen put us through. I think she was challenging me on this on purpose. That's why she gave me the test. So y'all gonna help me pass
It's
this.
the new challenge.gov.
And I'll share the link. I'll share the link after the meeting with everybody so you can keep adding more ideas here. I wanted to say I added one thing here that I heard too that I think is important, is that GSA needs to look at how it's selling to other agencies. Because you got to remember, the HGSA basically supports other agencies, their missions. So when we're finding new innovators, GSA actually also has to sell it to other agencies that are buying these innovations as well. So I put that there as an idea to explore, because that's another link here, that the actual funds are going to come from other agencies most of the times. And that's, what GSA is providing the vehicles, but it's the other agencies' funds that would actually procure the products and services, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. You know what I'm thinking? That we, just because of time and because this is such richness right here. I mean, this was the gem we've been looking for, right? We didn't expect to get it. We found gold. Is how do we maybe send this tape as well as this Jamboard to all the members?
Yeah, we can do that. As soon as we get it. And we actually have an admin meeting next week. Maybe we can continue this conversation at an admin meeting that we have for next week.
No, I don't think you hear me.
Yeah.
Take this taping that we're taping right now, where we're jamming, right? This we've been on for I don't know how long, almost 2 hours. Take this 2-hour taping, as well as this Jamboard with the Google attachment, and send it to all the members of the FAC, because all of us are here.
Gotcha.
And then ask for them to provide insights and take away from what they heard, because perception is determined from where you sit. And this is what we're perceiving. But there may be 2 or 3 other members who are not here that may have different thoughts.
Gotcha.
In addition, it gives us a chance to marinate on what we heard, to add some more insights and takeaway. So when we come back to Kristen and she says, now let's put this in order to present, then we would have a more robust, it wouldn't just be the 6 or 7 or 8 of us or 9 of us that's here, but it'd be all of us would have the opportunity to participate, because I believe this is meaningful. Yes, Nigel.
Technical question. Is our recording, sometimes when you use these recordings on Zoom, there is an AI tool that allows it to transcribe into a Word document?
Well, we get a transcript, and Stephanie, you can talk to
Okay.
that. We do get.
We'll get the transcript. Okay. I'm just thinking
Yeah.
the Word document will be easier to search
Mhm.
for key comments and terms. But if I get the Word doc, that'll be great. Thank you.
Yep. And so this is time sensitive though. And I know what Dougie Fresh told me we only have 4 minutes left. Thank you, Dave. So I think we can be, so can we get this done by Friday, Boris, to get this out to everyone? I'm asking. That's a question. That's not a command.
Yeah, let me check with the tech team, make sure that we can make it happen.
And then we can
Yes.
encourage people. Then Kristen and I can encourage people on the email to, hey, check this out, or have you seen that? And then we can create conversations with our group on an email to get people to really look at, hey, at 1:05, I saw this, at 1:10. I think we this is an engaging conversation we shouldn't let go of, so that when we do put this in order, it's right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And Dave, if you can speak up right now, I think on process, there's a process we go through before we get the YouTube ready, right?
That is correct. We have to get it approved as well as the transcript. Now,
Right.
just for clarification, Farad, are you asking for, because the video will be placed in the folder on the share drive that can be accessed by all members with their GSA Gmail accounts. Are you asking for it to be emailed, or do you think just directing them to that folder will be sufficient once it's available?
Yeah, I think a lot of them may be as tech savvy as I am, that
Okay.
by putting it and making it easier, we'll get greater participation.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So we can work with Skylar on that.
All right.
Boris and Bianca, perhaps. Just depends on how quickly the transcript and video become available.
Hey,
Yep.
thank you so much, David. And I know you tell me I've got 1 minute left, 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left. So are there any other conversations or questions around what we're talking about doing? Because that means this is not the end of a meeting. This is a continuation of a meeting. So the adjournment is for part 2. So any other thoughts that we're talking about to go forward on a go forth strategy? If there being none, I am grateful to be able to give back 1 minute of time. David, is there any other thoughts discussions. Everyone feels free, mind, body, soul. There being none, this is a continuation. The meeting shall be adjourned. Is there a motion? So moved by Angel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, I heard it. Thank you so much. There's the nays don't have a vote. The yays do. This meeting is over. We look forward to y'all. Y'all be blessed, stay warm, and watch out for global warming. Y'all be blessed. Thank you.
All right.
Meeting
All right, take care.
adjourned.
Well,
We can
Thank you,
start the
meeting
recording.
adjourned.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.